I'm going to teach you more in the next 60 seconds about the thyroid than most board-certified endocrinologists know. I call it Hashimoto's nonsense, pushing thyroid medication. You want to talk about a pandemic in this country? We have a pandemic of medicating organs in the body that have done nothing wrong. So bear with me here. And by the way, I'm a scientist and not an artist. Okay, so thyroid gland is right here in the neck. It produces two hormones. It produces T4, and it produces something called T3. Only here's the little known secret about the thyroid. It only produces 20% of this hormone of T3. But wait a second, we're diagnosing hypothyroid, but it's only responsible for 20% of the thyroid in my bloodstream. So the question is, where does the rest of it come from? Where does the 80% come from? I mean, if I was a detective and a crime had just been committed and there was an 80% chance that one guy did it and a 20% chance that somebody else did it, I'd probably investigate the 80% guy first, right? That's not what we do. We immediately hold the thyroid responsible for a crime it only has 20% chance of committing. So where does the rest of that hormone come from? In Hashimoto's, it comes from T4. It's methylated. This doesn't even happen in the thyroid. Yet when it's low, we medicate the thyroid. The only guarantee if you're on thyroid medication is that your dosage will increase. That's the only guarantee. Why? Because you are killing the thyroid. Now, eventually, it succeeds in completely beating the thyroid into submission, and now you are permanently reliant on levothyroxine, Synthroid, Armour. But if we understood that T4 is converted into T3 by the process called methylation, and that is the suite of B vitamins, pyridoxine, riboflavin, thiamine, niacin, and pantothenic acid, and if we put those back into the human body, it can start to perform this function again, and the thyroid disease goes away. People say it all the time, Gary, you cured my thyroid. I said, no, I didn't. There was nothing wrong with your thyroid. I fixed how your body uses the raw material. This is what 10X Health does, right? We fix people by empowering the human body to do what it does best. I promise you this, there is no better hormone in the human body than one you produce yourself.
What's interesting about the thyroid is that the thyroid produces two hormones, right? It produces T4 and it produces T3. I'm oversimplifying a little bit, but it produces thyroid hormone T4 and thyroid hormone T3. The interesting thing is when thyroid hormone T3 is low, we call this hypothyroid, and we medicate the thyroid. Synthroid, levothyroxine, what's called NDTs, natural dissected thyroids, Armour thyroid, all of these different medications that we use. But the truth is that the little known fact about the thyroid is that it only produces 20% of the T3 in your blood. So if T3 is low, which is how the majority of thyroid diagnoses are made, there's an 80% chance that it's not the thyroid. Yet 100% of the time, we medicate the thyroid. We hold the thyroid responsible for a crime it's not committing. And so the real question is, where does the rest of the T3 come from? Well, it is methylated from T4. You see, there's not a single compound known to mankind, not one. There's no vitamin, no mineral, no amino acid, no nutrient, no nothing that we put into the human body that is used in the format that we put it in. Everything, without exception, goes through a process of being converted into the usable form. It's just like we pull crude oil out of the ground, right? But you cannot put crude oil into your gas tank because the car doesn't understand that fuel source. Crude oil has to be refined to gasoline. Now the car understands the fuel source. This is no different in human beings. We put nutrients into the human body. The human body converts them into the form it can use. And if it can't make that conversion, you have a deficiency. So for example, if you cannot convert folic acid into the form the body can use, methylfolate, then you have a deficiency in methylfolate. Well, what are some of the things that methylfolate does? Well, some of the things that methylfolate does is that it methylates thyroid hormone T4 into thyroid hormone T3. I would bet my entire career that you have a gene mutation called MTHFR. MTHFR. In English, we call it the motherfucker gene, but that's not what it stands for. Hopefully that doesn't translate to French very well. But It stands for methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase. It's essentially the gene that codes for converting folic acid into methylfolate. That might not sound like a big deal until you realize that folic acid is the most prevalent nutrient in the human body and in the human diet. And folic acid, by the way, is an entirely man-made chemical. Folic acid does not occur anywhere naturally in nature. You cannot find folic acid anywhere on the surface of the earth. We make it in a laboratory. You can find folate, but that's a very different compound. And if you can't make this conversion, you have a deficiency. Well, if you can't convert thyroid hormone T4 into thyroid hormone T3, which actually happens in your gut, does not happen in your thyroid, then your thyroid hormones are low. And your doctor's going to tell you you have hypothyroid. And if you have hypothyroid, they're going to medicate the thyroid to try to raise the production of those hormones. Well, the only guarantee you have if you start taking thyroid medication is that your dosage will go up. Over time, it will go up. And you will see very little movement in thyroid hormone T3 because the thyroid's only producing 20% of that number. So if we first tried to supplement for deficiency, so if you have a thyroid deficiency, methylfolate, specifically 5-methylfolate, the complex of B vitamins, a really good B complex, pyridoxine, riboflavin, thiamine, niacin, pantothenic acid, zinc, and magnesium. Those are the supplements that you need to take to actually turn the methylation back on in the gut to raise thyroid hormone T3 levels. Is converted T4 into T3, which happens outside the thyroid in the gut. So by changing her diet, one of the reasons why she feels better and has likely seen changes in her thyroid is because there never was anything wrong with her thyroid.
Right.
People tell me all the time, like, oh my God, Gary, I started taking those supplements and it fixed my thyroid. And I remind them, it didn't fix your thyroid. There was nothing wrong with your thyroid, right, to begin with. It fixed your methylation. When you give the body the raw material it needs to make these conversions, T4 into T3, magically T3 rises and you no longer have hypothyroid in some cases because there never was a condition wrong with the thyroid. So I hate those terms, hypothyroid. We should say hypo T3.
Right.
Where does T3 come from? Oh, 80% comes from the gut. We should be looking at the gut first and say, let's fix methylation by diet, getting folic acid out of their diet if they have the MTHFR gene mutation, supplementing with the right raw materials so they can convert thyroid hormone T4 into T3, and then see what happens.
Right.
And then just get out of the body's way instead of hammering a perfectly healthy organ for something it wasn't committing.